Hey, everybody. Who thought this show would be back? The Media Goon Show is back. Um, had a little bit of a layoff because I was busy as hell. My buddy Joe Shoes asked me to bring it back on Twitter the other day because he needed to vent about the Mets. I don't think he needs to vent about the Mets too much anymore. But I'm glad he actually gave me the little nudge to bring the show back. So I'm not going to waste anybody else's time, waste my time, waste your time, waste Joe's time. I'm bringing everybody back in, and here's Joe.
Yo, what's happening?
Hey, Joe. Joe is actually one of my favorite people that I do not get to hang out with enough because he doesn't live in the New York State area anymore. Don't blame him, but I really like when he does come up and he does like wrestling shows and stuff. I like to stop by and say hello to him. Awesome dude, great Mets fan, great, even though he doesn't always say it, but he's a great wrestler. I love what he does. He's
I might be the greatest
overall.
Wrestler.
You know what? I'm not going to disagree with you at times. So, Joe, what do you think about all the Mets stuff that's been happening over the last few weeks, and then with the trade deadline?
I think a lot of people need to chill. The gamut of emotions, and I understand everybody is a little bit testy right now, right? This season did not go the way any of us had ever pictured it, and that sometimes happens, right? Like my dead grandma always used to say, sometimes these things happen, and it's not for lack of trying, and it's not for lack of effort, and whether you agree with the trades or not, and I can understand both sides of the fence here. But the one thing that got me that I was seeing on the internet yesterday was people saying this is typical Mets incompetence. It's like the Wilpons never left. And to that I say, you people, not the people in the front office, not the people on the team, the people on the internet, you are delusional. If for 1 second you think that this is typical Mets incompetence, please kindly deactivate your accounts so people don't realize how stupid you actually are. Enough.
Yeah, I mean, if this was typical Mets in the past, they would have been like, all right, we're going to pretend we're buyers. We're going to bring somebody in that's, a C-plus player and say, hey, we're going for it. Get your hopes up for a little bit towards the end, be 10 games out of a wild card, and then just suck the life out of you.
I don't even think it's that. I think if it was typical Mets incompetence, they wouldn't have done a thing yesterday. They wouldn't have known which way to turn. So the fact that they picked a direction and actually had a plan and went and executed the plan, to me, is something I can get behind, because at least they said, you know what? This is what we're doing, and they went and did it. They didn't do the hokey pokey, 1 foot in, 1 foot out. Maybe we're contending, maybe we're not. Maybe we sneak into a wild card. For the people who do sneak into a wild card, is that even that important to you? Because I know in 2016, getting in just to lose a 1-game playoff to the Giants, or getting in last year because we didn't win the division just to look like shit against San Diego, it feels like you didn't even get there. And I understand maybe you felt like the lineup didn't change enough this year, right? The way that this team kind of walk through September and into the first series against San Diego, they were not good. No one's going to come here and defend that way they played for that month and a half, and then how it carried over into this season. But they still won 101 games last season. And yes, this team was largely unchanged, but they did make upgrades. But things you cannot count on, like losing your closer halfway through spring training before the season even starts, it's not like you go and replace that overnight. No one's looking to give you one of the top 5 closers in the game 2 weeks away from opening day at that point. So that has a trickle-down effect on your entire pitching staff all across. And that was like the harbinger of things to come.
Yeah, I mean, I don't get what people expected after DeGrom left at the end of last season. Like, who they were going to replace him with. You replaced him with one of the best options out there. Didn't work out. And then the Mets were like, you know what? let's get rid of this. Let's figure out what we have to do. Let's try to bring back people to bulk up the farm system again. And I just, I might run the QBC, but a lot of Mets fans just like suck the life out of me with the stuff that they talk about and they expect to happen. Like
it's ridiculous to a point, because when you lose DeGrom, and DeGrom is a generational pitcher, right? And for a franchise, and let's be honest about what the Mets are. We are the little brother. In the history of the Mets, we do not have this cavalcade of great players in our history. We do not have this litany of MVPs and batting champions. And so our greatness is on a very limited scale. So when you lose a guy like DeGrom, who is homegrown and was absolutely better than anything we've probably seen as Met fans since early 19-year-old Doc Gooden, right? What else can you compare it to? Even I'm a little too young to have appreciated electric young Doc Gooden when he was first coming up. I'm a little too young for that, and I'm 40. I'll be 42 this year. So if I'm too young for that, there are people who have never seen anything like this before. A lot of us weren't around for Seaver in the 60s and into the 70s. So it's hard to put that into words as a Met fan. And when you lose something like that, and we all knew he was going, we all knew he didn't want to be here. And I have no problem with that, because you know what? I don't want to live in New York either. It's awful. The cost of living is terrible. The people are terrible. The infrastructure is terrible. The tax rate is terrible. There are a lot of bad things about New York. And the fact that I could go out and get a cheeseburger from Cherry Valley at 1:30 in the morning doesn't happen to make up for all of those. So I don't blame DeGrom for taking the bag and going to a tax-free state. And what did the Mets do? It's not like they just said, oh, I guess we'll just sit here and, wait for the next one to come through the farm system. No, they went and signed the best available pitcher, and that's Verlander. What else do you want? They went and signed Verlander. They went and traded for Raley. They beefed up their bullpen by bringing in Robertson in December. You loaded up that bullpen to the point where you looked at it and you said, Diaz in the 9th, Robertson in the 8th, Ottavino, who, listen, I'll be honest with you. To me, Ottavino is the new Mel Rojas. I don't like Ottavino. I cringe every time Ottavino comes in, but Ottavino at least has a little track record, just like Mel Rojas used to. But whatever. Ottavino, you bring in Brooks Raley for your lefty. You go out, you make these moves, right? You got the young positional prospects on the horizon. What I'm more worried about is the Mets' internal development staff, where it appears that we do not know how to analyze our own internal prospects, where we said, oh, Pete Alonso's a butcher at first base. He may not be Keith Hernandez, but I don't think he's that bad. Oh, Fernando Alvarez he's not going to stick a catcher long term. He's strictly a bat. I watch Francisco Alvarez, I watch him and I go, I don't know. It feels like he's stealing a couple strikes here. Feels like his throwing arm's pretty good. All of a sudden, they're like, oh, yeah. He comes up to the big leagues. Now all we do, for such a young guy, he really knows how to handle some veteran pitchers. He's a real leader behind that plate. When did this change? You wanted to keep him down there all year. If 19 catchers didn't get hurt earlier in the season, Alvarez would still be down in Syracuse. Now, I understand we were pushing for Beatty. Beatty was the guy we kind of wanted to get up here. He's a little older. You would hope he's a little bit advanced. He's a butcher over at third right now. Will he learn it? I hope so. He looks like he's willing to put in the work. We know he was working in the offseason with Troy Tulowitzki. This isn't a guy who, I feel like, is going to wallflower into a corner and never rise up again. But it's growing pains. You can't expect all your rookies to come up at the same time and all of a sudden be all-stars. That's just not feasible. There needs to be some time for development, but that makes me worry. We said the same thing about McNeil. McNeil can't play a position, yet every year we play McNeil at 4 positions and expect him to know how to do it.
Yeah, that's right. McNeil can't play a position. He has to play 4 positions. Yeah. So they're kind of right. They can't play a position. But yeah, you know what? They've always had that problem with the farm system. Probably since like the late 90s, early 2000s. They've touted people that they shouldn't have touted, and then the guys that they didn't think were going to do well end up doing well. The other thing I've also heard from people is that with the pitching, Like if you were a pitcher that had a certain pitch and you came up, they try to change your pitching. So like some of the pitchers that came up through the system that relied on the fastball or a screwball, it's like, hey, you know what? You should really be throwing a slider and a curve. Stop throwing this as your number one and number two pitch. Why would you do that?
Well, that goes back to Doc Gooden again. Remember, Doc Gooden came up fastball, curveball. That's it. That's what you got. And you know what? No one can touch it. And then Mel Stottlemyre got it in his mind. We got to teach this guy a third pitch. And listen, Doc had his own problems, and those are well documented. But all Doc needed to throw was a fastball and a curveball. And when he got out of that, that combined with his other outside issues did not make for the best sauce. And now it was just a few years ago where all we talked about was the Mets with Dan Warthen, the Pirates with Ray Searage. Oh, the slider. The slider's the in pitch right now, right? Remember, we were all throwing everybody throws the Warthen slider. Okay, and then what? Everybody throws it until someone figures it out. Then we throw, the cutter is where it is. Everybody throws the cutter up in the zone now because hitters are now with that uppercut in their swing, trying to increase their launch angle. We got to throw up in the zone. So it's monkey see, monkey do. And that goes for any business. This is not just limited to baseball. Moneyball opened up a can of worms. And whether you like Moneyball or not, it very clearly exhibits the fact that if someone figures something out in any sort of way, everyone will follow until someone else figures out what's next.
Yeah, I mean, it's just, like you said, monkey see, monkey do. And when are we going to get somebody in the organization that bucks that trend? And Hefner seemed like he was a good pitching coach 2 seasons ago, even into last season. What happened with them? Is it because of all the veterans he had as pitchers? What did they do with McGill? What did they do with Peterson? Like, what happened to them that being like decent pitchers to totally falling off the face of the earth?
See, but you say that 2 years ago, Hefner seemed like a good pitching coach. What do you base that on? I don't know what I've never played. I can't tell you what makes a good, to me. Like, I stopped playing at high school. So I don't know what a good major league pitching coach is. I know we think coaches are good when the teams are performing, right? We think coaches are bad when the guys aren't performing. I can tell you that when the Mets fire Howard Johnson as the hitting coach, it's not that Howard Johnson all of a sudden forgot to teach people how to hit. We just think his message isn't getting across. So I don't really know what makes a good pitching coach, because to be a teacher, you need a student. And if you have students who don't want to learn, and I'm not saying I know this or I know any stories, but whenever and Gelbs is talking about this incessantly now on any SNY broadcast lately, ever since the trade of Scherzer, he's like, last year we showed all this footage of all the guys sitting around and talking together and going over the game and talking situations. And this year, they didn't do that. Okay, Gelbs, it's fucking August. Why didn't you talk about that in May? That's not a story in May. Hey, this team may not be. And what is it? Just like you got to be in the clubhouse, so you don't want to put it out there? I understand that's part of your job. But if it's okay to say now on July 30th, when they're trading Scherzer, this team's not together. They don't hang out and go over game situations. They don't powwow. If it's okay to say it now, why wasn't it okay to say it a month ago? So this is what I don't get is what makes a good coach, because I can't tell you. Maybe McGill doesn't want, and this is complete juxtaposition, me making up stuff out of thin air. If you're telling me last season this team was close, they were getting together, they were all friendly, they went over game situations, there was more enthusiasm in the clubhouse, I look at that and I say, okay, if it's not there, then what changed? Did Verlander coming into this clubhouse change that much? Did it change the opinions of people? Did it change the leadership arc? Who gets the power? Who's allowed to talk? Who's allowed to say what? Does Alonso not get to rip off his shirt anymore? Did Edwin Diaz getting hurt take a lot of fun out of the game for these guys? That's the way I got to look at it. Is Verlander going over to McGill and saying, don't listen to Hefner, he's a fucking scrub? He was a career quadruple A player. Why would you listen to him? I don't know. And I don't know that he did that. And he probably didn't, but when you have these situations, and Gelbs hasn't expanded upon this, he said it multiple times now, but he hasn't said why, and he hasn't said how, and he hasn't said who. So I can't do, as me, the viewer, can't do anything but hypothesize what changed. What did you do to the secret chemistry, right? That's all we talk about, because, you can't put chemistry on paper. So what changed? You put a different ingredient in the clubhouse cauldron. What was it?
I don't know. The team hasn't really felt the same since they started collapsing in September last year, where they just fell apart. It just, after that, it seemed like the team went flat and they never recovered, like picking up each other. And even with the fight with Lindor and McNeil, back in the day, they still were like, oh, whatever, was a raccoon rat, we don't know. But it just seems like now that with the team being so flat, nobody had each other's back, and they were really looking like, yeah, whatever,
If you would give me the Lindor McNeil raccoon rat situation now, it would be very reminiscent of the scene in Major League where Bob Uecker wakes up from a drunken stupor to see all the Indians on the field throwing punches at each other. And he goes, and the Indians are showing their first sign of life in forever. Because the Mets, since opening day, have not felt like there was any passion. And they felt like watching this team was like watching a person who's been there before know that, we'll get there. I'm a big Pittsburgh Penguins fan. So if you guys watching are hockey fans, maybe you can go along with this. The Pittsburgh Penguins just missed the playoffs for the first time in 20 years. And every year for the past 5 years or so, I look at it and I go, you know what? The team's getting older. This may be the year that the playoff streak breaks. And you see them kind of sleepwalk through different parts of the season because they've been there and they've done that. And they've won 3 Stanley Cups since 2009. But at the end, they would find a way to turn it on and kind of get into the playoffs. And what happened in the playoffs, once you're in, it's a crapshoot, right? And that's the same way in baseball. It's a tournament. You just got to get hot at the right time. And good teams feel like they can always do that when it matters. They'll be ready when the time matters. The problem is the Mets had that vibe where they just felt like they were entitled to a playoff spot. They just felt like they were going to back in to a playoff spot. And it felt like there was no need to worry. There was no need to care when you're getting your ass blown out in San Diego or when you're getting chewed up by whoever. You are, and they kept saying all year, there's a lot of games to play. There's a lot of games to play. And what you find out in September is the games in April and May count just as much as the ones in September. And the ones you lose in September, those matter because you didn't win the ones that you should have won in April and May. And that's why we didn't win the division this year. But there just seemed to be a general lackadaisicalness with this team that they just felt like they would wake up in October and be in the playoffs regardless of what happened in the prior 4 months.
Yeah, I mean, I didn't go to a lot of games this year because of work, but the games I did go to, none of them really felt fun. You would go, you'd be sitting there interested. There was just even watching on the field. It's just man, there's no oomph to the team. And if there's no oomph to the team, why should I be invested into the team? Absolutely. And and it's hard with the guy that runs the Queens Baseball Convention not having any fun with the baseball, and it's not like the product itself. It's just the team.
And winning does cure a lot of ills, right? They always say that. Oh, if you win, people will come out, people will be interested. That's 100% true. But you know what else? I've sat through, and you have too, and a lot of people have. We have sat through some really, really bad Mets teams and some really, really bad full seasons. But there's still been ways to enjoy the season. There's still been ways to enjoy the team. There's still a desire to want to watch that team, whether it's in person or on TV, or finding ways to keep up with the team. I will tell you, 2012 was a horrible season. It was also one of the most fun years I had as a fan. The team has no fire. We care. We're here ranting and raving and yelling and screaming when every guy in this locker room, all they can say is, oh, well, I need to sit down and have a conversation with Billy and Steve. What? I'm Brandon Nimmo. I need to sit down with Billy. And you know what? After speaking with him, I feel really good about things now. How? What is it that was said to Brandon Nimmo? Oh, I don't want to get into that. Well, now you got to tell me, because I heard what he said to Scherzer, and I don't feel good about things. And at first, I was feeling okay. Like, you want to trade Scherzer? I get it. I'm with it. All right, we got a plan. Now you're telling me, oh, well, now we're going to trade Verlander. And now I say, interesting. I kind of see the reasoning, but someone's got to pitch next year, right? Like, what are we going to do about next year, guys?
Yeah, I was actually listening to a couple other podcasts till the Mets do its part, and they were talking about, like, who they can sign next year, who they have, basically they really have Senga and Quintana that's going to translate over to next season. So then who's out there? That Arrieta or Arola? I mean, like, who's out there that you can get out? Urshela?
Ohtani. And if you don't get Ohtani, which you're not getting Ohtani, you've made it clear that you probably don't even have interest in Ohtani now, because we all had the pipe dream, right? We're all sitting there going, oh, Uncle Steve's money. Well, you know what? Even if he wants to stay on the West Coast, what's stopping Steve Cohen from throwing another $50 million at him? Because you know what? $50 million is $50 million. And you got to have some set of balls on you to turn down $50 million, whether you like the town or not. And now what they've made clear is there is no Ohtani. There is no Ohtani dream. That ship has sailed. And reading Scherzer's interview with Ken Rosenthal yesterday, now I'm looking at this going, whoa, I don't know if this is what I signed up for either, because we sat there, we were, and don't get me wrong, I'm still much happier with Steve Cohen than I was with the Wilpons. And we're seeing his commitment even through the trades, because we're talking about almost $100 million he shelled out at this deadline to get rid of players to get better prospects back. That's still a major financial commitment that the Wilpons would have never even entertained. Remember that one trading deadline back in 2017, where it was like we gave away Jay Bruce for the Aramark hot dog buns, and then anything we could get rid of was we were taking someone's number 87 prospect just to get Jay Bruce's money off the roster. Yeah. So that's not what this is, but it definitely does push back the expectation window, doesn't it?
Yeah, I mean, the good thing is that they restocked the farm system. Maybe they use some of these players in the offseason for trades. I mean, I think there's like 87 shortstops now. I'm not too sure, but I think there's 87. What are the Mets going to do, like, in the offseason? Like, who's available free agent wise? Who can they put a Band-Aid on for next season? Are they going to try to contend for a wild card while building for 25? What is their plan? I don't know if a lot of people have a lot of faith in Epler. Is Stearns coming in? Are they what are they going to do overall? And it was pretty funny how there was the 3 to 5. Cohen's like, yeah, I want to win in 3 to 5 years. I don't think that's going to happen now.
No, and listen, Cohen's a business guy, right? He made an investment in the team. And last year, before the 2022 season, all of a sudden you have Starling Marte and Mark Canha, and you went and signed Scherzer. And as Met fans, these are the players I felt like we never got. These guys are professional players who made your team better. And you know what's really cool? Having good baseball players on your team. Because, yeah, the Mets would go out from time to time and sign the big name guy. And then inevitably Roberto Alomar would completely forget how to play baseball, or Jason Bay would get rocked by a wall and not be able to play baseball. Stuff like that was common. But it was either we got those big fish, or the other guys were like the low roster Joe Orsulak, filling out the card type guys, where now all of a sudden we looked at our roster and you're talking Nimmo in center and Marte in right and Canna in left. I'm like, wow, those are good baseball players. Eduardo Escobar. Okay, maybe that didn't work out as much as we hoped it did, but he had a hell of a month of September last year, was well liked in the locker room. He was obviously a good professional influence on other people on the team. Lindor had a great year last year. Listen, for better or worse, Lindor is the face of this franchise, right? For better or worse.
Yeah. He's the guy that's going to be here. If there's rumors that they're looking to shop Alonso. I don't know if that's going to happen.
It most certainly sounds like Pete Alonso's gone during the offseason, doesn't it?
Yeah,
and that's not something it's something I would have if I was going to do that. When you make a move like that, it takes a certain size of testicular fortitude to make that kind of deal, doesn't it? Because now you're looking at someone, like I said earlier, for a team with a very real lack of great players or great numbers. How many home runs does Darryl Strawberry have as a Met? What is the Mets record?
Off the top of my head, I couldn't tell you.
I believe, and someone will fact check me on this and tell me if I'm wrong. Off the top of my head, I believe it's 252. 252 is a very unimpressive number to be your all-time franchise leader for a team that has been around for over 60 years at this point. You're going to tell me that we're going to go and trade a guy, and I understand if you don't like Pete. I know your cousin doing his vulgar Pete, thing. I get it. But listen, I'm old. I am not that old. I got no problem with the F word. If anything, that's how people talk in the way I think. But I believe Strawberry's 252 and Alonso is like fourth on the all-time Mets home run list right now. And you're going to tell me that we're going to trade that guy when guess what? People like home runs, right? Isn't home runs what saved baseball in 98? Yeah. Now you're going to tell no one likes his cousin. I actually think, I will say this, Mets police is right a hell of a lot more than he's not.
Yeah, I'm not giving him the satisfaction with that, though.
Big Mets police fan right here, Captain Joe Shoes.
Well, that's how I met you, is because I used to write for Mets police.
Yeah.
And that's how we became buddies. Joe is an awesome dude. That's why I said he's a great baseball mind. Great. I love him when he wrestles. We got a fact checker, Darryl.
252 on the dot. All right.
There you go.
Thank you, JC.
So, yeah, without getting too much about Mets Police, yeah, if there was a Mets Police, there wouldn't be the Media Goon Show. There wouldn't be the QBC. Even though I run it now, Joe's been a part of the QBC. One of my favorite parts of it when he was on the 7-line dating game.
I did that.
Yeah, it was awesome.
That was a long time ago now. What was that? 2014?
2014. We're going 2014. We're going on our, because it was the first year. We're going on our 10th year of the QBC being founded, and the 9th year of events that weren't canceled and stuff. So we'll be celebrating.
That Mets team run fan fest really stayed for the long haul, huh?
Oh yeah, they the funny thing was they actually asked us to not do ours, and then we're like, when we're still going to do it until we realize nobody wants to. If there's a big one, they're not going to come see older players when they can go see the newer players and current players. And then they offered us, hey, can you run a room all day for panels for us? I go, how much? They said for free. And I'm like, absolutely not. I work too hard during the week. I'm not going to go for free.
How much would they have made?
Yeah, exactly. I mean, they lost money, by by doing that, and that's why they don't really want to do it anymore. They're going to just focus on Old Timers Day, which they didn't
Old
do this
Timers
year,
Day is
which
stupid. But the way to do it now, and I see it in wrestling, the meet and greet is at an all-time high with people who want to actually get autographs, get photo ops. I think you have to do the convention style, and you guys have been on that with your meet and greets, with your panels, and with your merch and stuff like that. But if you see around WrestleMania time in every town WrestleMania is in, like this past year was in LA, the year before was in Dallas, this coming year will be in Philadelphia. WrestleCon is a huge event every year with wrestlers from the past. They basically get anyone who's available and bring them all in. You buy a ticket to get in, which is a reasonable price. But then if you want to go meet someone, if I want to go meet the $1 million man, Ted DiBiase, well, he's got his own prices for an autograph 8x10 or to sign stuff or to take a photo with him. The Honky Tonk Man has their own thing. So those are all up charges or deals you make with the actual performer at the table or whoever's running their table. That is what will bring people. I'm sorry, I like the idea of Old Timers Day, but am I really getting excited about Felix Mantilla in a tight uniform who can't even swing the bat anymore? No, I'm not.
No, what you do with an Old Timers Day is you have a little convention the day before, and then you have the next day, you have the game before the game. So people can meet their heroes the day before at Citi Field. You know, they have the Amazing Mets Foundation. There's no reason why they can't charge a little money, and that money goes to charity to the Amazing Mets Foundation, where they make everybody happy. The foundation, the players feel like they're being respected, and people want to come see them, and then the fans get to come see them and take a picture with them.
Or you even do it the wrestling way. Carney, make your money. Capitalism, baby. I'm not telling you can't make your money, but hey, Jay Horwitz running the Mets Alumni Foundation. How about you bring out a list and you bring out some vendors and you call the Media Goon here and say, hey, here's the list of people we'd like to bring in. If you would like to be a vendor, Todd Hundley is $5,000. And you could charge whatever you want for Todd Hundley to do whatever at the table. Hey, Joe Shoes, we want to bring in Greg Jeffries. Here's his price. Are you willing to do this? And that's how you do it. And you let people make money, because if people make money, guess what? They're more willing to do it again. And that's how this becomes bigger. And while you're doing that, guess what? Someone's selling hot dogs. Someone's selling bottles of water. Someone's selling adult beverages, because you know what? I'm going to have a couple drinks and then finally say, I wasn't going to do it, but yeah, I'm going to spend that $150 to meet Carlos Beltran now. Because guess what? I like Carlos Beltran. And maybe I don't want to spend it. The Pope is $20. Hey, some people are. That's the thing. If you give me an opportunity where, you know, Daniel Murphy is over here for one price and Mackie Sasser is in one corner for one price, and I could go bring my starting lineup figure from 1996 of Ryan Thompson to get signed, because I am someone who would like to do that, actually have one signed. But the fact of the matter is, these guys have merch. People want to get the merch signed. The collector thing has not completely died off. It slowed down since the heights of the pandemic. But if you're sitting on a stack of starting lineup figures that you collected from your childhood, and you say, wow, I'd really like to meet Juan Samuel right now, if only to get that starting lineup figure signed, then guess what? Doesn't matter what Media Goon is charging you, you're going to pay it to meet Juan Samuel. Even if you hated Juan Samuel because he couldn't play center field. Even if you hated Juan Samuel because you loved Lenny Dykstra. Even if you hated Juan Samuel because you grew up watching 1986 Mets A Year to Remember on VHS over and over and over, and kept trying to do the hot foot just like Howard Johnson and Roger McDowell, and now they got rid of Roger McDowell. Even if you hated it, you will still pay the $50 to get Juan Samuel's autograph.
It was like we just had the event with Howie Rose on Saturday. Great event. We had it at Catching Astoria. Howie loved it. We loved it. You know what I I found on Amazon, I found little microphones to sell. So that way Howie could sign those. People love them. You know,
Yep.
you get stuff like that. Just like you're saying, you find something very carny and people will buy it if they really want it. And that's the whole point with like the QBC. I've even floated Greg Jeffries for you, just so you know.
I mean, that's the way to go. The first great prospect in my life, anyway.
And if we do get Greg, I want you to be the host for that panel because I know you'd kill it.
Me interviewing Greg Jeffries would be akin to Chris Farley doing the SNL skit with like Paul McCartney. It was like, you know, when do you remember when you played in the Beatles? Yeah, that was awesome. And I would be like, Greg Jeffries, remember when you used to swing your bats underwater to train? Yeah, that was cool.
I think he's doing that with his sons now too, with the swinging the bats underwater.
Yeah, he's running. He's on Twitter, and of course I follow him. But he's running some kind of hitting camp or hitting instruction or whatever. So good for Greg Jeffries. And you know what? Once he got out of here, once he was stopped being bullied by Keith Hernandez and David Cohn, do that now, guys. See what kind of HR mess you have on your hands. But once he got out of New York, he ended up, if you look at his numbers, with a very respectable career. All-star a couple times, had some really good years for the Cardinals, really good years for the Phillies, bounced around a little bit at the end. He's very good to use an immaculate grid right now. If you guys are playing immaculate grid, oh my God, Greg Jeffries, Tigers, Angels, Phillies, Cardinals, Royals, Mets, that's some good options right there.
Yeah, I keep seeing everybody posting about that. I have no idea what it is. I don't have the brain capacity to even start dealing with it because I'll get sucked in.
I am completely addicted to it. Every morning I have a group chat dedicated just to Immaculate Grid where we all play. Everybody sends it to each other, and then we make fun of the people who can't finish it, Brian Myers, and we constantly are impressed by some of the pulls. Like, well, one of the other guys today pulled Stan Belinda, who was a pretty useful reliever back in the 90s. He was one of the great relievers in the early days of fantasy baseball because he would throw a lot of innings. He'd get you a lot of good numbers. He was on some of those really good Pirates teams. Who I hit Joe Orsolak today was a good one. So people were impressed by that. I tried to do it by using all ex-Mets because that's where my forte is, especially in the 90s. We had a lot of weird guys playing for the Mets, right? So I try to keep my focus on using ex-Mets. Todd Zeal, Octavio Dotel, great guys to use.
Yeah. The Mets have had a lot of players come through the organization over the years. A lot. I can't believe you brought up Thompson with the start lineups. Yeah, so
well, but the Ryan Thompson thing is a big deal because when I was at a certain age, and we're very impressionable, right? When we're kids. And that's why we love this so much, because it means a lot to us as we grow up. And in certain situations, there are things that to other fans seem negligible, but to a child where this carries a weighted sense of importance, it is a very big deal. And when David Cohn got traded at the 92 deadline to Toronto, I felt like my world broke. I was a huge David Cohn fan. And I will never forget watching him against the Phillies on the final day of the season and striking out 19 people. I will never forget watching on WOR because we didn't have cable when I was a kid. So I could only watch, and that's why the games seem more important to me and why they're so memorable is because I didn't get to watch every game as a kid. So when David Cohn threw a 1-0 shutout against the Giants and threw 166 pitches in that game, you better believe I fucking remember it. And when he got traded to Toronto for Jeff Kent and Ryan Thompson, I'm sitting there going, Ryan Thompson better be real fucking good to get traded for David Cohn right now. Because you don't understand retool, rebuild. You just understand that I got to go to school tomorrow. And the Yankee fans are about to rip my ass because we traded David Cohn. And because the only other guy that people have ever heard of on this team is like David Segui. There's no one on that team. It's terrible.
Speaking about Yankee fans, and then when Cohen ended up going with the Yankees, oof.
Horrible.
Yeah, Gooden,
and
Strawberry.
A few years ago, a buddy and I were at Kauffman Stadium, Kansas City, and never been to the ballpark before. If you've never been, great ballpark to go visit. Sight
awesome.
lines are great. The food is great. The beer options are great. They've got a thing if you're there with your kids out in the outfield. They've got like a little play place for your kids and a carousel and mini golf. Really cool. The Hall of Fame and museum right there. If you walk past center field by the fountains, it's a really good stadium experience. Awesome. But they were playing the Yankees that day. Just happened to be in town. It happens to be a Yankees game. As we're getting ready to walk out, Royals walk off the Yankees. We're leaving the stadium. I see David Cone. And I'm with my buddy, who's also a Mets fan, around the same age. And I go, holy shit, I think that was David Cone. And he pops up and he goes, good eye. And like paparazzi, without a word to each other, we start stalking David Cone. And we're like kind of power walking behind him. Like, oh my God, we got to catch up to David Cone. And he ducks into like the whatever kind of diamond club or whatever they have. And my buddy looks at me and we're just standing there like the scene in Wayne's World where it's like, oh, but my girlfriend's in there. And like the security guard's like, yeah, a lot of people's girlfriends are in there. You know, we're just like hung out to dry, stuck out outside the gate. And my buddy looks at me and he goes, I know that walk. He just has to take a whiz. He'll be out in 5 minutes. And I'm like, okay, if you say so. So we're waiting. I think this is only a couple years ago. So I'm probably like 37, 38 years old at the time. And my buddy's just a couple years younger than me. So like we're grown men, like actively stalking David Cone at this point. And sure as shit, 5 minutes later, comes out. He's back into his power walk, getting ready to walk out. And we're like following him again. I go, excuse me, Mr. Cone. And he no-sells it, doesn't say a word. So I go, all right, I'll try it one more time. If it doesn't work, it doesn't work. So I go, excuse me, Mr. Cone. And he does turn around this time. And he goes, oh, hey, guys, how you doing? And I right away, total fanboy mode. It's so nice to meet you. We're big Mets fans. And blah, 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 blah. And we start gushing about being Mets fan. And his face lit up. He could not stop talking about how much he loved playing for the Mets and how he never wanted to leave the Mets. And then I'm bringing everything I just said before, the 19 strikeouts against the Phillies, 166 pitches, and I'm bringing that up right there. And his book had just come out too. And of course, he's in a Yankee uniform on the cover of the book, which, you know, we'll ignore. But I'm there. I'm like, yo, I remember these things. And he's like, wow, you're like a really big fan. I go, I was 11 years old, man. This was the only thing that in my life that mattered at that point. Like every game felt like life or death. So when David Cone gets traded, I'm not going to ever, for the rest of my days, I will not forget Ryan Thompson. And the fact that Ryan Thompson is immortalized in an action figure, in a starting lineup, in a Mets uniform. Jeff Kent as well, a starting lineup in a Mets uniform. David Cone has a starting lineup in a Toronto Blue Jays uniform. I have them all here somewhere. Here. Just drop them. David Cone as a Toronto Blue Jay. Look at that. Cone, 11. Ugh. These things exist. And if you're telling me, oh, you want to get a Ryan Thompson figure signed? Yes, because when I was 11 years old, Ryan Thompson lived rent-free in my head and still does to this day.
Yeah, I mean, I get it. I think, you know, maybe because I've been in like around the film business and celebrities and dealing with the players with the QBC, I'm not like, I don't collect autographs that much anymore. There's certain people I do, but like for the most part, I'm just like, you know, I can't anymore. I love talking to people. I love talking to them, but like my wife forces me to take pictures with them. I'm just like, here, let me get it, whatever, you know, go about your day. Like doing the QBC for me, like I'm like somebody with your passion. That's why I love doing the QBC. So like you come in like, hey, you know, I've never met Bartolo before. Let me go see Bartolo. I can take a picture with them. Great. You're not upcharging me for the picture. You just charging me for the autograph. Oh, I can't believe it. That's awesome. And like with me, that's seeing somebody take a picture of Bartolo is more fun for me than me actually taking the picture of Bartolo and getting an autograph. And like knowing that something like somebody lives right free in your head as a kid, like I get that too, but it's not, I'm not like that for some reason. I don't know why, but I'm not. It's weird. Like on what's not? I bought like one of his action figures. I made Brian sign it QBC for life, just as a joke. And then I made Cardona go, let's go Mets. So just because he knows nothing about the Mets.
No,
so like that kind of stuff, that kind of stuff makes me laugh. So like I'll get that kind of autograph, or anything I think I could flip, I'll get autographed now.
Mm-hmm.
But
just for me, like personally, and I'm a collector of certain things, and I've tried to whittle down what I collect, because you find out, you start collecting too much, all of a sudden you have no space. And that because of your insane jersey collection and your memorabilia stuff. And eventually it gets to the point where it's like, wow, like I got to stop. Not only do I got to stop, but I got to start moving some stuff out of here too. But to me, being able to get a picture with people I either looked up to, or people I respected, or people who are famous in whatever line of work they're in. Like when I get to be on a wrestling show now, and it's not lost to me that I'm very lucky in a lot of ways to still be doing something like 7-year-old me was a big fan of, and then getting to meet the people that I used to watch. Like the first ever wrestling show I went to was main evented by Demolition. And then 22 years after that, I got to wrestle Demolition and meet Demolition. And I always say, wow, like imagine telling that kid, like that day in the crowd at Nassau Coliseum, hey, one day you're going to be in a ring and wrestling those two guys right there. His mind would explode. And for me, like to get to meet David Cohn, and I got to take a picture with David Cohn at the stadium that day, couldn't have been cooler about it. And even like we're trying not to bother the guy, like giving him out, like, okay, man, I really appreciate it. Thank you. And he's like, and one more thing. And he would go into another story about being on the Mets. Mm-hmm. Like it was the coolest experience ever. And it's not necessarily that I need to collect autographs, but like the idea that I can meet these people now and have access to these people, because I was one of those kids who always wanted to go to the games early, go to batting practice, try to get my baseball card signed. Was successful a couple of times. Like I got an Alex Ochoa autograph one time. I got Charlie O'Brien one time. I got John Franco one time. But you don't have the kind of access that you can possibly have now. And if you tell me, hey, Charlie O'Brien, Mackie Sasser, Barry Lyons, Alberto Castillo, we're doing a whole panel of catchers. We're going to line up all these catchers right here. Brent Maine is in the corner. He's going to come do a Q&A right now. Like, I'd be like, this is amazing. Like, I'm going to go shake hands with Brent Maine. Like, that's great. We got to go meet Alberto Castillo, who hit that opening day base hit up the middle in, like, what was it, the 13th or 14th inning that one year? Like, that's amazing. It was like 97 or something. That's good stuff. It's just the idea that I can meet these guys and take a picture and still enjoy it. I'm not one of these guys that's too cool for school in a lot of ways. In some ways I am. But when it comes to baseball and it comes to the Mets, like I'm still a kid, man. And I still love it and I still appreciate it. And I'm still in awe of certain things and certain people.
Well, as usual, you have an open invite to the QBC every year. So maybe one day you'll surprise me and just fly up.
Oh man, I wish it was that easy, man. I wish I just a lot of times there's just a lot going on.
Mm-hmm. I know, but that's why you always have the open invite. You just show up. Your name's on a list.
I'll be the party host. I'll be like the oh man, what was that? The Flavor Flav of the QBC. I come out, get everyone hyped.
The hype man?
Yeah.
Yeah, you we can actually just put you in the green room with everybody to keep them all hyped up.
Yeah, who else would be in there? Licata? Is Licata gonna be in there?
Licata goes into the green room when SNY is around. It's usually the SNY folks. We put the players back there. They relax, eat, chill out. We have our staff go back there, beat them, so that way when they're not overwhelmed. Mm-hmm. But yeah, I was doing QBC stuff already today. That's like the one good thing about this writer strike and the actor strike is that I've been able to focus on QBC stuff right now to get ready for December. So
it's great that you find a way, and I know how big a Met fan you are, and I know how much you care. So it's great that not only have you been able to channel a passion into a business venture, but you haven't lost the love of doing, of making your hobby, part of your job. And that can become a tenuous thing at times when you do something like that.
Yeah, you can lose the passion for it, and then it just becomes a thing. That's like working in the film business. Like if I let some of the folks that work with me, rub me the wrong way, it could eat at you too. Like you don't want to
Yeah, of
watch
course.
whatever they're in and stuff. Like one of the coolest people I've ever
Yes,
worked with
Stephen
is
Amell. That's right.
Oh my
Stephen
God.
Amell.
Not only is he annoying wrestling fans now he's annoying his fellow actors.
Let me tell you, I have a weekly pop culture podcast that comes out on Thursdays. So, and I know no one listening to this listens to that as well.
No.
But it's called Car Jomez. If you want to ever check it out. And in tomorrow's episode, I just watched season 1 of Heels. And I've never watched Arrow before. I know who Amell is because he's done a couple things within the wrestling world. Don't know him personally. I just know who he is. But I watched season 1 of Heels last weekend because I knew it was coming back for season 2. And people have told me, hey, you should really watch this. It's kind of good. Let me tell you something. Those people were liars. The show sucks. Stephen Amell has the emotional range of a piece of plywood. Terrible. And then he wants to go out there and talk against the strike. Are you kidding me? Why? So you could go promote your shitty ass show? Stop it. Think before you speak, Stephen Amell.
Like I'm not gonna, I can't get too much into it, but I'm not gonna say you're wrong at all. But the thing I do want to ask you about, what do you think about the wrestling on that show?
Terrible.
Like,
so I make this comparison, and feel free to disagree with me. That's why they're called opinions, right? To me, the greatest baseball movie of all time is A League of Their Own. And I know some might scoff at that, right? You like Major League, you like Bull Durham. I'll tell you what you shouldn't like, For Love of the Game. It's completely horrible. Or Field of Dreams. I don't think it's horrible, but hey, Dad, want to have a catch? No, you don't have a catch, you play catch. So that destroys it for me. But A League of Their Own is, to me, the best combination of story and actual baseball play. All the actual baseball play within the movie feels semi-realistic. Looks pretty good. When I see Rosie O'Donnell catching a line drive and then making a throw across the diamond, I don't sit there and say, ugh, well, she didn't look like she knows how to fucking throw. Looks good. When Madonna's running down a ball in center field, looks pretty good. When Marla Hooch, what a hitter, is swinging that bat, it looks pretty good. And then you watch a show like Heels, which is 30 years after A League of Their Own came out. You would think there's enough wrestling people. We've come far enough with wrestling as an entertainment option where it's not looked down upon that a show like this can even get made in the first place. And yet, the wrestling looks terrible. The writing of the wrestling business is by someone who's never even heard of the wrestling business or still thinks it's 1976, where somehow a small local independent promotion in Duffy, Georgia is competing with a small local independent wrestling promotion in Jacksonville, as if there's going to be any crossover from fans who are making that trip over the Florida-Georgia line and listening to the terrible country music. I'm from Queens. I don't like country music. I don't care if you don't like that.
I don't like country music.
You're not competing for fans. You're trying to give these people exclusive contracts, and people are living their lives in this show with, oh, but once I get my title shot, bro, it's fucking fake. I love wrestling. It's been a major piece of my life. Like the business of wrestling has been a major point of my life since I'm 19 years old. But it's not real. And you thinking your life is going to turn around working in front of 150 people in Duffy, Georgia, as long as you get your title match, it just ain't it, pal. So it's very poor writing, it's very poor acting, and it's really just, it shows how ignorant the general public is about the actual wrestling business itself. It's just a very poor show all around.
So how do you really feel?
At the end of the day, I think Stephen Amell is going to win a Golden Globe for actor most likely to get kicked out of the union.
Well, then he could just be the producer that he is. That's what he's really caring about.
Oh my God. And like I've never seen Arrow, so I don't know. Like, but in this show, man, he's like wood. He like I just don't get it. I don't get the way they wrote his character. Like he doesn't make enough money from running the wrestling federation. So he has a job as a lawnmower salesman that apparently he never goes to because he's too busy doing indie wrestling work, like not hanging up flyers, not selling tickets, not basically sitting in front of his laptop writing a script like it's a screenplay for the next week's wrestling card instead of just saying, Media Goon, you're wrestling shoes, you got 15 minutes, you're up, and here's the finish. That's all you do. I've never been to a show where a guy gave me a verbatim script that I needed to memorize.
Yeah, they're writing like it's the WWE when it's an indie show. Yeah, I'm also trying to figure out like that whole setup of how he has all that truss, the lights, the sound system. I'm like, no indie show has that much gear, even if you don't.
That's
move.
Mike O'Malley's rival promotion. And he has family money, and he's got some kind of like Playboy Mansion type house that's like a nonstop tequila orgy or something. It's very, very odd.
Yeah. So if you I don't even know Mike O'Malley. So you've watched it more.
Mike O'Malley was the guy. He was from Guts.
Oh yeah.
And
you know what? I actually knew
he's been in 100 movies.
I went to the school. I went to St. John's with his cousin.
Okay.
Yeah, I totally forgot about that. I thought you were talking about Mike O'Malley, the character, like there was a character in it. But Mike O'Malley,
the actor. Yeah, Mike O'Malley, the actor, plays like the rival wrestling promoter. Yeah.
He had that sitcom on Channel 11 for some time or something like that too.
And he was on Glee. He was like one of the kids' dads on Glee. So Mike O'Malley's been around, done a lot of things.
Yeah. Let's see. It's pretty much every show about any business.
Yeah, it's the truth. Like whenever you're in any industry and you see someone doing something about it, you immediately say, "This would never." No, So obviously we have to up drama and make it seem like it's a lot more than it really is. But I mean, this is just really bad by comparison. And the Mets are getting spanked by the second worst team in baseball tonight, 3-0. Good game for Senga. Actually, I haven't been paying attention, but 6 hits after 2 doesn't sound like a good thing.
I have YouTube TV. They took SNY off. I haven't watched the Mets game unless it's on 11. Yeah. I haven't watched the Mets game since it was on ESPN. If it's on ESPN or Channel 11 or Apple, I watch it, but I haven't watched it since YouTube.
Let me see if you're aware of this. I have the MLB TV package, and there has been a recurring problem throughout the season for a lot of people because I've been following it on Twitter when it started happening to me, where you were being blacked out of games, even if they were out of market games. Like, so I live in Orlando. I expect to be blacked out of the Rays. I expect to be blacked out of the Marlins. I get blacked out by both teams. So whenever the Mets play either one, I'm screwed. But last week, I got blacked out of Mets Nationals. And I said, is this game on MLB Network or ESPN? Nope. It was on SNY. So there's been some glitches within the MLB TV about out-of-market games that should be available being blacked out. And you're having to basically direct message MLB TV or MLB fan support or whatever and give them your IP address so they can send a manual override. That way you're actually free to watch the games. This has been an ongoing issue.
That's ridiculous. How MLB shouldn't have that kind of a problem. You know what? Nothing should be blacked out at this point anyway.
At this point, I don't know how. I understand we still have contracts, but as we see, those regional sports networks seem to be going the way of the buffalo. So I think everybody understands for the good of the game. I understand good of the game doesn't really mean a lot to Rob Manfred, but for the good of the game, if you want people to watch it, You should probably make it available to them. I'm always amazed. And you guys have two local teams, the Mets and the Yankees. I have what's considered two local teams. But I'm a fan of an out-of-market team, so I'm not overly affected by it. But if you're someone who lives in the Midwest in this country, and this always boggles my mind, if you live in like Iowa, you are blacked out, effectively blacked out of 5 different teams, I believe.
Mm-hmm.
The Twins, the Cardinals, the Royals, the Cubs, the White Sox. You're black. You might be blacked out of the Indians, the Guardians, and the Reds as well. And the Brewers, like you're talking, what, 7 teams, 8 teams, a third of the league you are blacked out of watching because everybody claims your territory as their own. That is absurd to me. So if you're someone who maybe gets enough money and takes a road trip and goes to a game once a year to see your favorite you grew up liking and listening to the Cardinals on the radio or whatever, you can't even watch your favorite team. How do you grow the game?
That's the problem with the MLB. They don't know how to grow the game right. They've lost generations of kids that have gravitated to soccer, football, basketball, and they feel like baseball's not fast enough for them, and they don't understand the nuances of the game. So it's not there for them anymore, and baseball might die one day.
I could see, like, we've already seen it become less prevalent within popular culture or within the general, within the general conversation, right? Baseball is not nearly as important as it was when we were kids, when it felt like time would stop for the World Series. That's what you watch. When it was the All-Star game, you watched the All-Star game. Mm-hmm. When it was the World Series, you watched the World Series. And now, I mean, we've spent decades now talking about how soccer was getting ready to take over America, and it hasn't. Has it grown? Yes. But I mean, it is still light years behind where we thought it would be at this point. I was, coming out of like where it was, if you go back to 1994, when the United States hosted the World Cup, and a generation of kids were introduced to soccer for the first time at this kind of level, seeing it in front of their face for an entire summer, where you could turn on the TV, you can see it in your newspaper. Upper Deck was releasing cards. It was a big deal, even if you didn't know why it was a big deal. And I feel like baseball has been completely lacking the public consciousness, with the exception of the World Baseball Classic. And you may not like it. You may not like it. You may not want to watch it. You may be scared of how it impacts your own team if someone gets hurt. Cough, cough, Edwin Diaz. But the fact of the matter is, I can tell you, when I would go to work, a bunch of people who never talk about anything, who never talk about baseball, never talk about their favorite teams, never talk about the All-Star game, said, hey, you watch USA and Venezuela? Hey, did you watch Puerto Rico? Oh, Dominican. Everybody was hyped. And you know what? Just because you don't like it doesn't mean it's not everything has to be for you. So baseball, and you gave me the best drama possible with that. I love the WBC. I'm into it because I like baseball. See, good job, JC. I love baseball, and I'm getting to see a high level of baseball played in a different way. I'm getting a tournament-style baseball tournament when I'm not used to getting competitive baseball. And that's what I like about it. And I got the 2 best players that I have ever seen in my life. I'm 42 years old. Like I said, I'll be 42 this year. The 2 best baseball players I have ever seen in my life, it came down to them. One pitching and one hitting, and what was going to happen. That's drama. You can't, if I wrote it for you, you'd be like, yeah, I understand, but this is kind of cliche, right? We're going to put the 2 best players at the end with a chance to win the game. Yeah, I mean, I guess that's the way it's got to go but it happened, and it happened for real, and we all saw it. That's what's good for the game.
Now, I'm not going to say that I'm not a fan of the WBC. I think that there should be a WBC, but do you think that where it's placed is the right place that they should have it during spring training?
Not at all. But the fact of the matter is, What you should do is what they'll never do, and that's shut the season down for 2 weeks in the summer and get rid of the All-Star game, get rid of the Futures game, the celebrity softball game. I get it's a cash cow for MLB and you don't want to give up that money, and you especially don't want to stop your season in lieu of saying something is more important, right? You don't want to act like something's more important than your regular season. But if you give me people at their peak physical conditioning, hypothetically, obviously you're going to have injuries throughout the season that are going to impact who's even able to play in the WBC. But I think what you're seeing now, especially on the American side, because internationally you are getting the top players, right? The best players for the Dominican Republic want to play. The best players for Venezuela want to play. The best players for Japan want to play. We saw Australia have competitive games. And that was the cool thing about the WBC this year, was even the bad teams that had no shot were being more competitive than they have been before, which shows you that this is having great success around the world in growing the game globally. Maybe not so much on the national level, but globally, when Italy is able to put a more competitive team out there, when Australia is putting a more competitive team. What was the team? It might be, was it the Czech Republic or something? Someone had a team where it was like they were pulling like a scientist. This guy was like a scientist, and now all of a sudden he's the pitcher. It was great. And they're doing videos. He's like, yeah, well, during the day, I'm a geneticist, but now, I'm the relief pitcher. And it's like, what? This is great. That's a great story. Great Britain. You would think they got someone who could play. They're the worst team. And
with the worst jerseys, too.
And the jerseys fell apart. It looked like that stuff you got off the bootleg sites with the numbers falling off and stuff. But the players cared. The fans cared. Look at where they played all those games at, was it Lone Depot Park now in Miami? Those are the only time those games are going to be full. Mm-hmm. When the Marlins were in the World Series in 2003, Joe Robbie Stadium wasn't full. But they were filled for the WBC, weren't they?
Yep.
They certainly were. And if you're baseball, that's what you're looking at. And if you need to sacrifice an Edwin Diaz ACL to do that, guess what? Baseball is going to do it every time. Are they going to shut down the season for 2 weeks in the middle of the season like they really should to do it? No. That's when they should. That's when I would want to do it and be damned the regular season. Because if I get a competitive tournament where it feels like there's stakes, take Marvel movies, for instance. You know what gets bad about Marvel movies? We've seen them now. We know the formula. And after a while, no one dies. And you say, wow, there's all these, they're in war. Like there's active war that the Avengers are involved in. And yet never feels like anything happens. So when Thanos does finally do the snap, it means a hell of a lot, doesn't it? Because finally there's some stakes. And when you have to watch a 162 game baseball season, we can lose the forest for the trees a lot. And like earlier, when I said you forget sometimes that the games in April count as much as the games in September, and we put too much value on the games in September, we kind of forget that there's stakes. And the WBC is there to give us almost like an adrenaline rush of stakes, where every game matters. Every game in a round robin first round means something. Then you get a knockout round. And to bring over some of these players when people are invested in baseball and get them seen by fans who maybe want to follow. I started following the KBO during the pandemic just because I needed something to watch and I missed baseball. And all of a sudden, Sung Bum Na became my favorite player. And I don't think he's coming to America anytime soon, but he was like the home run king of Korea. And that would be great.
Just like my buddy over there, the greatest American ever to pitch in the KBO.
Oh, what is he? Colorado Rockies legend right now, right?
Exactly. Yeah.
I would think, JC, I would think not necessarily the leagues have to shut down, because if you do it the way soccer does it, now the league doesn't necessarily have to shut down, but the importance of representing your country kind of does take priority over playing for your club. which no owner in baseball is ever going to want to hear because it's never been that way in America. Around the world, that's the way it is. You leave your club to go represent your country. So theoretically, Francisco Lindor would be saying goodbye to the Mets and going for 2 weeks to play for Puerto Rico. And for those 2 weeks, Luis Guillorme probably got to cover shortstop. But don't worry, because the Nationals are missing someone and the Phillies are missing someone. And theoretically, all these teams, some are going to be hit harder than others based on how many good players are leaving your team because they have to go play for the WBC. But theoretically, all teams will be missing some type of talent. You don't even have to shut down the league. It's just we're going to be running the WBC during the season. But that's a non-starter, right? And I don't even think fans want to see that. Half a major league game without the biggest stars because they're playing in the WBC. But
Joe,
that's because it's not something we're accustomed to in the United States. That's very much a regional bias that we have.
Joe, I know you told me I only had you for about an hour. I have you for an hour and 10 right now, so I don't want to keep you longer. And you keep saying steaks, so it's making me hungry. But I want to thank you for coming on. Anytime you want to come on, just let me know. I'll do a special show for you. Do a special show for you. I love having you on. I love talking to you. Like I said, I wish I could actually hang out with you in person more. Even when you're at an event, I can't hang out with you because you're like, I'm out. See ya.
Yeah, I get on a plane as soon as I can.
Yeah, so I want to thank you for this. I'm going to take us out. Everybody, thank you so much for coming. And hopefully we'll do this again soon. Thank you.
Can't wait. Thank you guys for watching. Thanks, Keith, for having me.
Hey, quick, anything that you got to promote? Any Patreons?
Oh, absolutely.
Any t-shirts? Let's go. The full Joe Carney run.
Car Jomez podcast every Thursday, wherever it is that you get podcast, or you can watch it at youtube.com/@CarJomezPod. CarJoemez pod. It's a pop culture podcast. Every week we're covering movies, TVs, and whatever else is new in fast food or Netflix news, box office stuff, just pop culture stuff, SDCC, stuff like that. You follow me anywhere on social media at The Joe Shoes, Instagram, X, TikTok. What's the other one? Threads. I'm on Threads. I'm a big Threads guy. Love Threads. ProWrestlingTees.com/Joe Shoes. Pick up one of these Magic Shoogie t-shirts that is based on the Keith Hernandez shirt, the very famous silhouette face. And I have a separate youtube.com/Joe Shoes, where I do fast food reviews and coffee creamers and stuff like that. So if you want to follow me, cool. If not, that's great. Otherwise, I'm just a Met fan, just like you.
Yep. And Joe is also you might be lucky. He supposedly was retiring from wrestling again. So maybe you'll be lucky if he hasn't and get to see him. Guys, if he is around, go see him.
I'll never retire.
One of the kayfabe. All right. All right. Here's the outro, guys. Have a good one.